Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petrie. This episode of Slam the Gavel is sponsored by CPS Protect Consulting Services. A child protective services case is one of the most frightening experiences for any parent. Don't face it alone. Face it with confidence with Urgent Assist by CPS Protect. You can have access to former CPS investigators to make sure you preserve your rights and protect your family. If you're facing CPS involvement and aren't sure where to turn, their child welfare consultants can help you. Visit cpsprotect.com/subscribe and enter the coupon code SLAMTHEGAVEL for 60% off your first year of Urgent Assist, and this is available in all 50 states. I have another announcement. Bradley's mother, Narcus Golan, passed away in the fall of 2022. Bradley is autistic and needs structured routine and therapies he receives for his autism 6 days a week. However, Italy just entrusted Bradley to the Italian Social Services. If he is ruled to go back, he will face the next 3 to 4 years in the Italian foster care system where he can't speak or understand the language. He will then be taken away from the only family he has ever known, and this will cause great trauma. Please call Governor Hochul at 518-474-8390. That's Governor Hochul at 518-474-8390 to please keep Bradley here safe in these United States. Hashtag keep Bradley safe. One last announcement. Go to the site, pleasedoyourjob.com. We need 2,500 more signatures to get a case reopened. This is highly important. That's pleasedoyourjob.com. I have a brand new guest on. I have Tyrone Thornhill on. He's an American man born in 1960s, raised by conservative parents. He's also a retired Air Force vet, and he's a common sense man with common sense values and opinions. He's also been married 42 plus years to the same woman. Congratulations. And retired from a 36 plus year career in the automotive industry. And his best advice from his mentor is, I don't embrace excuses, I only embrace solutions. And the best advice he can give is live each day as if it was your last, and one day you'll be right. And I welcome you, Tyrone Thornhill, to my podcast, where we have a lot to talk about, because apparently a lot of people don't have common sense.
You're absolutely correct with that. And welcome. And thank you very much, Marianne, for having me today.
I'm honored to have you on. We're going to talk about, we were talking earlier about personality disorders and all sorts of things on that matter, but there's a lot of people with just no common sense. They're so smart that they don't have common sense.
People have actually lost their individuality, in my opinion, and for the simple reason that they just don't want to be canceled by anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And they won't. You know, a lot of people, we were talking about people, the population of sociopaths that have gone up. And a lot of people confuse sociopath with, a psychopath, and those are two totally different things. The sociopath just doesn't have any kind of empathy for anybody else's position or feelings, and they only think of themselves. Everything gets turned around to themselves. The gentleman who's in charge of this country right now is a classic case, in my opinion, of that. Mention anybody who's been a veteran, who's lost somebody, he always turns it around to his son Bo, who was not killed in action, but who died in the hospital of cancer. For whatever reason the cancer was, he didn't die that way, but that's the way it always gets turned around. And unfortunately, a lot of people have taken that cue and used that as their swan song. Oh, it's all about me, it's all about that. I find that we can't get together anymore because most people think that a conversation or even a discussion or even a debate, for that matter, has to end in total agreement. And who the hell said that?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know how all that happened. I don't know if that evolved from years of watching the Brady Bunch or the Disney Channel.
Even the Brady Bunch, and I grew up on these guys.
Yeah.
I grew up on the Partridge Family. I grew up also on Sanford and Son and Good Times.
Oh, I loved all that. Yeah.
Yeah. But everything started off as one person felt one way and the other person felt the other way. It was two different things. Now, for TV's sake, everybody saw the same sheet of music at the end. And that sheet of music was always the same crescendo. What's right is right. not because I say it, but because it's right. The
Mhm.
truth has no color, it has no shape, it has no form. The truth is the truth. So it doesn't matter who's saying it. It doesn't matter who's not saying it. The truth is the truth. So you don't own it. As I always tell people, you are more than entitled to your opinion. What
Mhm.
you're not entitled to is your own truth. And as soon as a lot of our people get rid of this fear of being canceled, and that's the biggest fear that you see from what I call the other side of the street, is that they have to, in order for anybody to heal in this country or around the world for that matter, the first thing that has to be done is that the person who's in the wrong has to say that.
Right.
If you know you're wrong, simply say it.
Mhm.
I was giving you an example of, building something. If I went out and bought a property, just to try to draw a parallel, if I went out and bought a distressed property that had a distressed home on it, and I just started building a brand new home on top of that distressed structure, guess what? I'm going to have a nightmare on my hands. It's never going to work. I have to tear down the old structure in order for the new one to make any kind of sense or for it to be stable.
Mhm.
And before, and I believe me, I come from a time where I wasn't the wonderful human being I think I am today, and a lot of people think I am today. I came from very screwed up beginnings and origins. There was a time that I was on the streets of Watts for 3 years out in the street. I was a dusty, dirty bum that you wouldn't even want to bend down to put a quarter in my hand. I put myself out there. I got myself out of there. Now I'm retired, been retired since I was 52, and I'm not tooting a horn or anything else, but I managed to sock away
Mhm.
a decent living,
Mhm.
keep myself self sufficient, and nobody came and gave me a brain transplant or anything else. I simply had to admit that what I was doing was wrong. Everybody who ever told me what I was doing was wrong was right. And I had to admit that to myself before I could move on. And I just wish that other people would follow that example. And it was example that somebody had set down for me. So I didn't invent it. I adopted it.
Mhm. Yeah, a lot of people, they don't admit they're wrong. I always say, I like to be wrong. If I'm saying something and, you know, or talking about a stat of something and I'm wrong on it, let me know. You I
Absolutely.
I would
Why
rather
would
be
you
wrong.
Why would you rather go around being wrong than if somebody can say right? That's why I have a TikTok account. And one thing I started out with, and I started this account with what I do now back in August 3rd. My wife went to go to my son's wedding in Vancouver. I couldn't make it because I'm on dialysis.
Oh.
But I decided to give myself something to do. I was going to do an experiment. So I started on August 3rd at TikTok. And I started out by saying, I am not the smartest man in the room. And I'm going to be wrong sometimes. And here is your opportunity to educate me. If you feel I'm wrong, please let me know. And when I see that I'm wrong, I'll use the same face looking right into this camera, just like I'm doing right now, and tell everybody, you know what, I was wrong and this person set me right.
Mhm.
That's the only way that we move on and we get things better in this country, my God, in the world.
Mhm. Most definitely. I remember when I was a new nurse, and I know this is horrible to bring up, but I I had to look up how to give an enema, and it was a certain kind of enema the doctor ordered, right? And so I had a mentor nurse, because when you're new, you're shadowed by, a seasoned nurse. And so I found the book and I looked up, what we had to do, and I'm telling her exactly what it is and what we have to do. And she goes, "No, that's not right. I know it. It's not right." So I had to get the book because, it's the book the procedure book. And I said, "Well, here it is. I don't know what else to tell you." She goes, "Oh my God, I'm wrong. You're right. You're" It was just so funny that, we just I mean, it was right there, but it was very kind of her to admit that she was wrong, but, we joked about it. But,
I'll tell you, if what a great example. If you can admit you're wrong about something like that,
Yeah.
there's no borders on what you can admit you're wrong on. Okay, so that's a great example. That I love that example. I might just steal that from you.
Well, even another example was that I gave my son, a military, oh, I don't know what it was. It was, probably like a shell or something that was actually my husband's, that was his father's, and I thought that since my son kept it in his room years ago, that it was his, and so I gave it to my son, and then my husband said, "Where is it? Where'd it go?" I said, "Well, I gave it to my son." He goes, "That's mine." And I'm going, "I'm in a big dilemma." I said, "I'm sorry." I said, "I thought since it was in his room, it was his." He goes, "No, that's mine. That's my dad's. I want that back." So I had to go to my son who's, 20, and I said, "I'm really sorry, but, I should have checked with my husband. I hate to do this to you, but can I have that back?" And he had no problem because he gets along great with my husband.
Right.
I made a mistake. I should have asked more questions.
Well, there it goes. The wonderful thing about that, not so much wonderful, but just life on life's terms, is that when your husband, God forbid, and I hope it doesn't happen for a long time, but when he passes on into the next life, that's going to go back to your son anyway.
Right,
I
right.
can't see it going to anybody else. So whose ever possession is in, it really doesn't really make a difference. And I'm kind of using once again, another parallel. I love drawing parallels to things because it helps a lot of other people to understand it. Some people won't understand what I'm saying if I make it too personal. That's why I try to speak in generalities.
Mhm,
Um, that's what I see as wrong. I mean, I lost a lot of family and friends, people who I've known for years.
mhm,
Okay, when I started making these things and people understood how I felt, and most of them understood how I felt right off the rip, but it was between them and me, not between other people they knew. Once their friends or their family could see me online saying my views and they actually admitted that they knew me and were a friend of me, then people started looking at them saying, okay, I wonder if this guy feels that way too.
hmm,
Enter the canceling.
mhm,
That's when everybody turns sociopath because they're so afraid of them, of happening to them what they did to other people for the sake of being popular and not using losing people who are pretending to be your friends. And if who you vote for or what side of the street you live on or who you pray to kills a friendship, then you
mhm.
never had one to begin with. And it's not a loss at all. That my grandfather used to say something a long time ago. He didn't say much because I didn't know him very long, but I remember one thing he said: if you go through his whole life and make two good friends, you've done very well.
I agree.
Everybody else are acquaintances.
What good is having 25 friends and they really don't care about you at all when it comes down to things, like really bad things happening to you in your life, God forbid, you
Yeah.
know, and, in fact, I had a friend that I had known since '93, and we had an argument over something online on Facebook. Of course, that this is where all this stuff takes place, and, I it just got toxic, and
It It does. One thing I found, and we've had quite a few conversations for the short time that we've known each other, and I don't believe I've held back anything, and neither have you. Okay, we've always been respectful to each other. We're not going to agree all the time. Period. If we did, it would be so damn boring. I wouldn't want to be invested in it anyway.
Mhm,
Okay, what am I going to learn if everybody agrees with everything I say?
mhm, mhm.
Okay? But one of the things that I do find is that most people don't want to be told that they are wrong. Most people don't, whether they know they're wrong or not. Okay, they will die on that hill pretty much. Now,
Mm.
I use as in my bio, I use my intellect. I used to be one of those people that just believed what the crowd were believing, and then I started looking things up for myself. Where most people will spend half the day on Facebook or something like that, and I'll tell a lot of people out there, it's no secret if you look at my TikTok or my Rumble or anything else. I'm a dialysis patient. I spend 3.5 hours in a chair a day.
Mhm.
Okay, 3.5 hours in a chair. There's only so much Netflix you can watch.
Oh.
There's only so much Disney Channel you can watch, for crying out loud. So I
Mhm.
spend my time, and I have spent my time for quite a long time, even before the kidney thing, using these tools to look up information. So when I do choose to speak on something, I'm speaking from education,
Mhm.
not from, emotion, not from what somebody else said. I go to every source and then I come to my own conclusion. And a lot of people don't do that anymore, which is the other side of the street. How can anybody think that what's going on in this country right now, the censorship,
Mhm.
my goodness, the court system,
Mhm.
judges, the law enforcement, our military, our border patrol, how can anybody think that that's normal when that wasn't the way it was? At least it wasn't so blatant just 4 short years ago.
Mhm.
And everything has just absolutely gone bizarro land.
Mhm.
And people will say, hey, this is fine, no issues, no problems, everything's good. I don't see anything. It's like the emperor's new clothes.
Mhm.
Okay, well, here's the trip, and I don't know how many people on the other side of the street. I don't know how many people that view your stuff is on my side of the street, but the emperor is butt ass naked. I don't care what neighborhood he lives in. He's wearing no clothes. And the story and the fable itself, it took a small child to tell everybody that, hey, why is this guy wearing clothes?
Mm.
Where everybody else saw this, and it's just like nobody can see this or nobody wants to talk about it. And you can't get anything straightened out if you don't discuss it or if you're terrified to.
And
So
they
I
go
go
ahead.
I decided when I started that TikTok, and I didn't expect, I mean, I just was going to do this for a week because then my wife comes back in and I would move on with life. I do an experiment. I can say, okay, I did this, bucket list checked off.
Mhm.
And that turned into since August 3rd, I've been doing this probably 3 or 4 videos per day.
Mhm.
So anybody who wants to hear the truth as I see it, you can go to the Nubian by Nature TikTok and look it up. And believe me, it's rough. It's not this, okay? Because I've been very, very behaved
Mhm.
as far as language and everything else, because I have a lot of respect for Marianne, just like I have a lot of respect for people on TikTok. But if I'm in Mexico, I'm going to learn how to speak Spanish, or
Mhm.
else I'm not going to be able to communicate with very many people, whether it's my native language or not. So
Mhm.
the language that I use, even though it's a little bit heavy-handed and a little bit rough,
Mhm.
it's what a lot of people respond to and understand.
Mhm.
And I've had a lot of people say, "Oh, I love what you have to say, but your language." Well, unfortunately, these are the same people that'll sit down and watch John Wick 50 times.
Right.
so, so it just doesn't make sense to me. But
Mhm.
anyway, that's what I decided to do, and I'm still doing it now. And I don't do any clown shows. I don't do any funny stuff. I'll naturally something. If I find something funny, I'll say something funny. But for the most part, I just comment on what's going on in the world. And I say what most people don't want to say because they do have something to lose. They're either working or
Mhm.
they live someplace where they're beholden to somebody. And you can't have that kind of view because once you come out like I do, you're going to know who's who.
Mhm.
50% of the people right off the rip aren't going to agree with you.
Mhm.
Me, I've never given a crap about that because I'm not beholden to anybody. I don't need anybody for anything. Okay. I'd love to have camaraderie and everything else, but it's not a prerequisite for me. So I can say the things that most people only think.
What does your wife think about all this? You've been married for 42 years. That is amazing, and congratulations on that. That's
Mhm.
rare, rare,
My wife,
R-A-R-E, rare.
my wife is well, my sons, I have 2 sons. They're grown. Both of them are in their late 30s. And they went to college and everything else. And I'm a conservative man, okay, raised by conservative parents. I thought I was raising my kids that way, but hey, guess what? They are kids no longer. They're grown men and they have to go their own way. Now, both of them, because they went to college, because they decided to go into the entertainment industry, I knew what that was going to lead to. There was going to be a lot of indoctrination. And I've always told them, please remember, if you don't remember anything else I tell you, be a leader, not a follower.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, those two men, and I love them and I always will, decided to follow. They voted for the first black president because other black people were voting for him, and they're half black and half white. I'm into an interracial marriage,
Mhm.
so they're half black and half white. But they voted that way because their friends were. They voted that way because and then they both voted for the guy who is in office now. And I told them never do anything out of hate.
Mm-mm.
And in my opinion, their friends convinced them to hate the person that was in office last time. These are the same kids who grew up watching this guy on the WWE fighting with Vince McMahon, and they thought he was the funniest thing ever. They used to both watch The Apprentice. He was, he was their guy that they wanted to be rich like him. And all of a sudden, because a bunch of people said, "Oh, he's a racist," and this, that, and the other, and never proved it, they bought into it and they went that way. And that's completely up to them whether they go that way. We don't even have discussions of that. The question that you did ask me, I digress. It's one of the things I say on my TikTok all the time. I digress. One of the things that you asked me was, what does my wife feel about that? Well, she's about right down the middle. She's right where a wife usually is, who's not on your side, but not on the other side either. And I respect her for that. She doesn't like to hear me say it. Like
She's
she'll go in her,
Switzerland.
yeah, she'll go in her room and close the door. And she's pretty much the only one that I really talk to. It's just me and her right now. I
Mhm.
don't have a lot of friends for obvious reasons. I don't go a lot of places. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't do drugs or anything else. I'm a Christian man, but I'm not religious.
Mhm.
Okay. I believe, but I'm not, a believer. And a lot of people can't deal with that. So when I start to say about things that are going on in the world, she, like anybody else, and I love her very much. And if all I could talk about was how many rainbows came up, I would much rather talk about that than how the world is today. That would be my dream come true. Unfortunately, that's not the way it is. There's people who want to try to live in a world that doesn't exist. I choose to live in the world that is right in front of me because that's the only way you're going to survive it. She would rather just not even acknowledge it sometimes.
Mhm.
Just doesn't want to. You know, there was a family member who made some posts, young lady, who made some posts on social media, TikTok, as a matter of fact, about this situation that's going on overseas
Mhm.
in the Middle East. And one of the things that I told her when I used to talk to her, and she doesn't talk to me anymore because of who I voted for, but that's okay. I wish her the best. But one of the things I told them, I said, when you're on social media, and especially if you have a job, if you have something that you're beholden to other people for, you might want to be careful of the views if it's not your bread and butter.
Mhm.
If you're a teacher or if you're working in somebody's company, you never know who feels opposite of you do.
Mhm.
And by opening your mouth, you just made your odds 50-50 that
Mhm.
you're going to insult somebody, probably somebody that you need. Well, this person decided to not do the research, being a teacher. She decided to make a comment, a couple of them, as a matter of fact, and she couldn't have been more wrong. Now, that's not the point. Whether she's wrong or right, she has a right to express her opinion. But within a couple of months, after all the everything else and the distraction has worn off of this thing, and then we're on to the next distraction, there's going to be a price to pay for that, especially when you live on the West Coast, where a lot of people are from that part of the country. A
Right.
lot of people do rule that part of the country. You get to pay that bill. The bill comes due
Mhm.
every time. And I try to tell people that before they go out and start running off of the mouth. And if it's something that you're quoting from a book, that's one thing. But
Mhm.
when you make it your opinion, that's a little bit harder to walk away from because nobody can, debate something that's true. But when you put your own little personal spin to it, and this is the way I feel, Now people know how you feel, and now you're out there. You're
Mhm,
in the middle of the ocean with half a sail because you just cut the other half off.
mhm. Well,
So,
like you said, if you're on social media and you do voice your, beliefs, you have to watch because if you put a resume into a certain place, they're gonna go through your social media accounts,
of course, they are.
and they're going to make a decision. In fact, when I was in court, I actually changed my party, hoping the judge would like me more.
And it's crazy that you would even have to do that.
Well, that did I mean, she still didn't like me. Well, anyway, but
It's something, you know. Do you mind if we go down that road just for a second?
oh, let's go
The
down the rabbit
and
hole. We
yeah,
because
I
I
love
won't
doing
take
that.
too long.
I love chasing the white rabbit out of the hole. You had just mentioned that, and I'm just looking at all the different things that have happened over the last, let's say, decade with the courts and everything else. First, let me start by saying this: unlike a lot of people that look like me, I don't discuss anything really in the prism of color or race or religion or anything else. People are people. Everybody is subjected to the same law and order. Okay. The laws are for everyone, not just for someone. Okay. That's the official thing. But what a lot of people who are just absolutely appalled at how somebody, first of all, me personally, I don't know how heavily into, because we've never really gone really deep into how deep into the legal system
Yes,
that you're in.
right.
But no matter who's in it right now, it's just a travesty. It's a travesty to me. First of all, I've never believed that one person should be a judge of anybody else. I just don't believe it. What happens if that person has an agenda? You
Mhm,
no longer have fairness, period. Case in point, the judge who's judging Donald Trump right now, all of them, the prosecutors. Okay, if somebody has an agenda and that person is beholden to their agenda, and now with the thing of social media, people know your dirty little secrets
mhm,
and they threaten to bring your dirty little secrets out if you don't turn the ship in the direction of the wind that they want to.
mhm,
Who's to say that anything is fair? And what a lot of people, I started to go one place with the race thing, what a lot of people are finding out right now is that this is just the way it is. And as I said, I'm a child of the 60s, and I've known a lot of people who got caught up in the court system, and it was never fair.
mhm, mhm,
Okay, because people just had back in the 60s and the 70s and stuff, if you were unlucky enough to look like me and end up have done something stupid, you were not going to get a fair shake. There wasn't going to be somebody there that says, you know what, I believe you just made a terrible mistake. Um, I'm going to put you on whatever.
mhm,
Okay. Because maybe you can straighten out your life. Nope, you did 10 years hard. That's simple because that's the way people were raised, and that was the narrative that people wanted to get. We have a president who's in office right now who actually did more for people to get caught up in the law system. And I'm not saying anybody's innocent or guilty, but there's a lot of people in the law system, black, white, Chinese, whatever, who got caught up who shouldn't have been there.
mhm.
When you're looking at judges, first of all, how are you going to say one man can decide somebody's life who isn't God? Okay, that's number one. That system is just absolutely nuts.
Mhm.
And
Oh, yeah.
if you were going to get a judge, the best case scenario is that that judge is non-political.
Mhm,
That means he's never voted for one or the other. He's never gone to, one side or the other. He's straight down the middle and he has to prove that. And if he lies and says he is, then he should be in trouble and have to be subjected to that same judicial system. The jury system is so flawed, it's absolutely ridiculous.
mhm.
What the hell does a person who delivers pizzas or a person who answers phones
Right.
or anything else, how the hell can they possibly tell if somebody's guilty or innocent? What school did they go to be able to use that deductive reasoning?
Right, a lot of people don't even look at the newspaper anymore.
No, they don't look at the newspaper. They listen to usually just enough of any subject to be completely stupid about it.
Mhm.
They can say it, but they know nothing about it. And when I bring these things up, people say, "Oh, you're nuts, this, that, and the other." I said, "Okay, prove it. I'll shut up and I'll listen. Just go ahead and prove it." One of the things that I challenge anybody to do, and I've probably got about just under 26,000 followers on my TikTok account. And that's what TikTok just absolutely shadow banning me, keeping people from seeing my stuff because they hate me. I'm in the middle of a war with them right now, but I digress. We'll talk about that another podcast. You'll get a big kick out of that. But I've always dared people. I say, listen, if you think I'm wrong, then do like I do. Don't use a phony name or a
Mhm.
cartoon character to describe yourself. Put your face and
Mm.
your name where people can look you up and come to you if you have an issue. Okay, that's what bravery is about. Okay, yes, I could end up with a nutcase. That would be the big problem for them. A nutcase coming down to talk to me personally, but I could have that happen in McDonald's. So,
Definitely.
what am I going to give up my free speech because of something like that because I feel threatened? Okay, right is more important to me than safety.
Mhm.
Okay, I'll stay safe. And if I don't, guess what? That's a natural selection thing. Okay, I'll do my best to keep myself safe and then that's it. But I'm not going to shut up and say, okay, I'm going to go live in a corner and not say anything for the rest of my life. And I've told people, hey, tell you what you do, use your face, use your name,
Right.
or just your face and do what they call a split screen and
Mm.
then show me everywhere I'm going wrong. Do you know how many people have done that so far?
No one.
Not one.
Mm-mm.
Since August, since the beginning of August, not one. And I've been called sellout and Uncle Tom and Uncle Ruckus and things like you wouldn't believe. It just makes me laugh so much. I use it as rocket fuel. It's energy to me
Mhm.
because most of the people who call names like that, let's just take Uncle Tom, for example, have no idea who Uncle Tom was or what he was about. They
Mhm.
heard it used in a bad way, so they think that's an insult. But all they're doing is actually complimenting me. And
Mhm.
I'm not going to do the homework for anybody, but you got a phone in your hand. Most people out there who's listening to this, or other people who happen to see this podcast or my stuff, just look it up for yourself. You can find out from my phone exactly who Uncle Tom was in 3 minutes. And I guarantee you, once you find that out, you'll never call anybody Uncle Tom again who you're trying to be mean to.
Mhm.
It's like calling your ex-wife a beauty queen, and it just doesn't make sense. But that's the world today.
Well, tell
But
me, but I don't mean to interrupt.
oh,
How I need, advice. Everyone always needs advice. How do you stay married for 42 years?
um, a lot of people have asked me that question,
Mhm.
and as I said before, I ended up on the streets. I was out drinking and drugging and doing everything that was wrong. I ended up, and she had had enough, and she went back to England and took. We had one son at the time, and took him back to England, and her family was okay there. So she had had enough.
Mhm.
And I had a moment of clarity when I was on the street. I drank so much I actually couldn't drink anymore because it made me physically ill. So
Mhm.
for 2 days I didn't drink anything, and I sobered up. And I looked around and said, how the hell did I end up here? What happened? And I called up my parents who didn't want anything else to do with me, and I begged them, said, listen, send me a plane ticket back to Boston. I'll go straight from the airport into rehab. I'll straighten my life out. I've got to get my family back.
Mhm.
Okay. And I did that. My brother, who lived in California, who had brought me out there the first time to
Mhm.
do the right thing, I played games with it. He actually brought me out again. And I mean, I worked 3 jobs. The only at the time I smoked cigarettes, and the only thing I spent money on was bus fare and cigarettes. Everything else went into the bank. And within 6 months, I had a place to live. I had furniture. I had clothes and everything else for the kids. I had clothes for my wife. I mean, 3 jobs, 2 full-time and 1 part-time job. I probably slept maybe 3, 4 hours.
Mhm.
And I called her up and I begged her, please come back and give me another chance. And
Oh.
she did. And we haven't been separated since. Okay. Has there been trials and tribulations? Of course. Did I learn my lesson all the way then? Of course not. Okay. I'm human, but
Mhm.
I managed to change everything that was rotten and screwed up about me just by telling myself first the truth. And the number one thing that I had to do was forgive myself for all my shortcomings. Because if you don't forgive yourself and you go into it with that defeatist thing, you're not going to accomplish anything. But the biggest thing that I did to keep my marriage going the way it is, and we still have crazy arguments, all day long, but we don't dwell on them. And usually, if one of us is wrong, we'll apologize and move on. But a lot of people ask me that question: what's your secret? There is no secret. If you got married in the church or even at the city hall, you took vows. You took vows in front of your friends. You took vows in front of a person who's performing the wedding. You took vows in front of your family. And most importantly, you took vows in front of God. If both of you are honoring those vows, you'll never separate. You'll never have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
If only one person is following the vows, you're going to have a problem. And if both of you aren't doing it, well, you might as well go your separate ways.
Mm-hmm.
So I just do everything that I sat at that altar and I promised to do.
Aw.
That's it.
You're
Simple
gonna
as
cry.
yeah, it doesn't make things perfect,
Mm-hmm.
but it makes it, it makes it to where you can hold on to each other, especially when you need each other. And nothing is supposed to be perfect. I wouldn't, a lot of people say, oh, you poor guy. They use snapshots in life. And I'm kind of getting off subject here, but they use snapshots in life to justify something, Marianne. Here's a good example of that. I told you I was homeless in the streets of Watts, okay? Dusty, dirty bum. Now, if somebody had came halfway through my stay out in the streets and just taken a snapshot of me, a picture, and put it online and said, please help this poor man, without any words of how I got there, what I had to do to get myself in that position, or what I did to get myself out of just that snapshot, you can sell whatever sad ass story you want to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I won't let people just do a snapshot anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I insist people see the whole movie,
Mm-hmm.
not just the trailer. Okay. Or shut up and watch the trailer and that's it. And don't have an opinion. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But you can convince anybody of anything with just a simple snapshot in time. No, everybody would have said, oh, that poor man. I could have people crying and could monetize TikTok just by showing a picture of me when I was at my worst and how I am right now. Do you know how much that would be worth? You know how many companies would want to have me do that right now with the following that I have? It would be one thing, but I just won't bargain on that. That's why I don't monetize TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get into the clown shows or anything else. If I find something interesting, I'll repost it, but that's about as far as I'll go.
Mm-hmm.
Most of it's my own opinion on certain things. And there are people that agree with me and there are people that I don't agree with. And I hit the rules on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
If you're on my side of the street and I think you're absolutely full of crap, I have no problem telling you that. And I pray that you would tell me the same.
I'm so glad you came on this podcast. I'm going to have you back on again. This was fun.
Well, it's you have an open invitation and I hope I'd have one too. It is fun.
Definitely. Well, how can people reach you if they have any questions or want to talk?
Oh, sure. They can reach me. Well, I don't give out my email because I use that for my business and everything else. And I don't want to be sitting there answering emails all day long. But I'm on TikTok at least a couple of hours a day because I do some postings. So anybody who wants to see me on TikTok, you can go to Nubian by Nature. That's spelled Nubian by Nature, Nature. It's under my name, Ty Thornhill. So you'll see my picture, the same picture that you guys saw up here. And that's me. I'm also on Rumble. Now, I'm not doing a lot of posting to Rumble, but I could be kicked off of TikTok any day now because I'm trying to get them to kick me off so I can go ahead and make their day. And I'll go into that another time. That's time for another podcast. But the way they treat conservatives right now, especially Black conservatives, and as I said, I don't like to speak in colors or anything else, but that's just the truth, especially Black conservatives, because they don't want other Black people thinking like I do. What the hell would they do then? So they try to pretty much silence us and censor us. And That could be another podcast because I have a lot of different, my opinion has changed a lot on the social media that's out there right now.
Mhm.
A lot of people think it's one thing and I'm believing it's kind of another. I used to be one of those people, but as I said, I have flexible intelligence. I don't believe just one thing wholeheartedly. My intelligence flexes around certain things. When I find out something new, it changes. And that's what I suggest everybody else should do. But that's the best way to get in contact with me right now. Just do a video. I answer all of my messages, believe it or not, and that's thousands. But
Wow.
anybody who writes me, as long as it's not authentic frontier gibberish or vitriol or something of that nature, I will answer you every time, even if it's just a couple of words or a couple of emojis. But I answer everybody who takes the time to write me. Okay. I can't follow everybody for obvious reasons,
Mhm.
but I do see. And if it's something out there that sticks out, I will answer you in a heartbeat. The same thing goes. It's a dual-edged sword. So if you're one of those people that like to use vitriol and call me names or something of that nature and not come correct, then I'm going to turn you into the joke that you probably already are, only I'm going to make it very, very public for you.
Well,
And I'll tell you something, anybody who's having a hard time, no matter what side of the street you're on, if you're getting bad mouthed by somebody or something like that, the best thing to do is make that person into a joke, because nobody likes to be the punchline and they will stop on their own. When I
oh,
first started
yeah.
this venture, it was like I used to get 200-300, bad, comments an hour, let alone a day. And what I did, especially for the other side of the street, my catchphrase is make them, yeah, I say to them, you have been rendered irrelevant and powerless.
Mhm.
And believe me, that has a huge amount of power, because how do you argue that back? I don't even call them the other side of the street or Democrats or Republicans or anything anymore. I call them it. I
Mhm.
don't even give them a human name. I just call them it. You are now reduced to an it.
Mhm.
And boy, they hate that, and they lose interest.
Well, hey, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, and there's the truth, and there's two sides to the coin, right?
You're absolutely right. And you're right about that, Marianne. Everybody is entitled to your opinion. The one thing that most of us have forgotten about those said opinions is that there are consequences when you have an
Right.
opinion. Some of the consequences are good, some of them aren't so good. But
Mhm.
be prepared for whatever consequences. When you decide to speak up, there's going to be consequences.
Mhm.
And once again, consequences don't mean something terrible or bad happening to you. It could mean something good.
Mhm.
So just be prepared for them and expect them. And in my case, I welcome them, no matter which side of the street they're on.
Oh, I'm so glad we had this conversation, but, don't go anywhere, okay? Don't jump off. Slam the gavel.
Absolutely.
Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth, and Raised by These Wolves, How Family and Federal Courts Are Failing Our Children. You can find me on Spotify, YouTube, Apple iTunes, Anchor FM, iHeartRadio, and feel free to buy me a coffee to help this podcast and keep it going. Thank you so much, Tyrone Thornhill. Thank you.
You're welcome so much.